Thanks for staying with us. We are just hours away from President Trump's decision, and stock markets are already reacting. The long-threatened tariffs against Canada and Mexico are finally coming to a head as President Trump moves forward with his plan to impose a 25% tariff. Trade tensions between the United States and Mexico have reached a breaking point, sending shockwaves across the North American economic landscape. Mexico's threat to cut off vital oil and energy flows, as well as key automotive parts, could trigger a full-blown tariff war that few saw coming. Once stable production chains fueled by low-cost labor in Mexico and vast consumer markets in the United States now stand on shaky ground. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has made it clear that if the Trump administration follows through on its tariff threats, he has a backup plan of his own. If President Trump's tariff threats continue, could Mexico's plan B upend the foundations of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, or will both countries ultimately back down to avoid a lose-lose scenario? President Claudia Sheinbaum's recent press conference initially hinted at diplomacy but warned that Mexican countermeasures were waiting in the wings. Meanwhile, American manufacturers fear skyrocketing costs and possible shortages if Mexico follows through on its warnings. Could these mutual threats disrupt everything from automotive supply lines to oil and energy security, forcing both sides to make serious concessions? We will examine the risks and rivalry shaping this high-stakes trade dispute and explore how close North America is to its biggest economic showdown yet. With Canada and China recently taking retaliatory steps against the United States and Mexico announcing that it is just waiting for its turn, the North American Free Trade Network appears to be in for a major shake-up. Mexico has hinted that if tariffs imposed by the United States continue, it may take radical measures such as cutting oil and natural gas flows to the U.S. and imposing extra taxes on parts sent to the automotive industry. The trade tensions long labeled as Trump tariffs are on the verge of escalating into a full-scale war. One of Mexico's biggest trump cards against the United States is its energy resources and automotive supply chains. As is well known, U.S. refineries regularly buy crude oil from Mexico, and the oil and gas pipelines along the Mexico-U.S. border represent a crucial flow of energy trade between the two countries. In the automotive sector, American, Japanese, and European carmakers rely on cross-border trade facilitated by Mexico's cheap labor and tax advantages. Every day, hundreds of trucks transport automotive parts between Mexico and the United States. If the Mexican government retaliates by cutting off parts, fuel, and other critical products to the U.S., American manufacturers could suffer the most. On the morning of March 4, President Claudia Sheinbaum addressed the situation in her daily morning press conference. She acknowledged the newly imposed tariffs but chose not to implement immediate countermeasures. This response points to a clear strategy. Sheinbaum understands that an immediate trade war would exponentially increase tensions, and she wants to exhaust all diplomatic avenues before taking retaliatory action. She also emphasized that Mexico has fulfilled its commitments under the trade agreement, which led to a previous 30-day break. She announced that she would personally hold a phone call with President Trump on March 6 to discuss the tariffs directly. She explained that senior officials from both countries had held talks over the past month, but the formal implementation of the tariffs now required direct intervention between heads of state. This call does not guarantee that the tariffs will be lifted, but it creates an important opportunity for de-escalation. If both leaders can set concrete, measurable benchmarks, they could agree on a plan that avoids further economic damage while ensuring cooperation on migration and fentanyl reduction. However, Sheinbaum also made it clear that if the United States refuses to withdraw the tariffs, Mexico will announce its countermeasures at a public meeting in El Zócalo on March 9. She assured the public that Mexico has a contingency plan prepared and is ready to act if necessary. When asked about USMCA negotiations, Sheinbaum confirmed that talks are ongoing. This demonstrates that despite the tariffs, Mexico remains committed to maintaining a trade relationship. However, tensions with the Trump administration are not new. There have been long-standing disputes over migration policies and the border wall. Trade is simply another dimension that has already frayed relations under NAFTA and now the USMCA. Tensions were further aggravated when Trump stated, "Look, if Mexico does not give us favorable terms, I will impose a 25% tariff." Mexico called this unacceptable economic blackmail. The tariffs are costing Mexico billions, but they also pose a significant burden on American businesses. While Mexico depends on the U.S. market, the United States also depends on Mexico's low-cost production. Some sources claim that the Mexican Ministry of Commerce is considering blacklisting American companies and imposing additional taxes. Leaked reports suggest retaliation against American agricultural products and critical parts in the assembly industry is on the table. Mexico's energy trade with state-owned companies like Pemex remains a critical supply line for U.S. refineries. If Mexico cuts off this flow or raises prices through taxes, the American fuel market will suffer, fueling inflation. From a political perspective, President López Obrador is gaining popularity at home with his message that despite Trump's rhetoric, the Mexican people will not be bullied. A tough stance in the trade dispute could inflame nationalist sentiments in Mexico. Likewise, Trump is consolidating his voter base with arguments such as, Mexico was already abusing us, failed to protect our borders, and widened our trade deficit. Neither side seems willing to back down. However, economists warn this is not a win-win but a lose-lose scenario. Mexico's retaliation could hurt Mexican workers just as much as American manufacturers. Automotive and electronics assembly plants may shut down due to trade barriers, and cutting oil and gas shipments would reduce Mexico's export earnings. Still, even though mutual economic harm is possible, Mexico remains steadfast in its position, declaring, "We are willing to take short-term losses, but we are determined to retaliate." Sources say Mexico is also considering joint retaliation with Canada, China, and other U.S. rivals. China, for example, has announced that it will impose a 15% tariff on U.S. products starting March 10. Canada has also signaled possible action, stating, "We will tax American brands like Tesla and restrict U.S. imports." If Mexico joins this front, the Trump administration could find itself squeezed from all sides. The United States relies on Mexico's crude oil, particularly for refineries in Texas. A possible supply shortage would send fuel prices soaring, triggering inflation and increasing Trump's political risks ahead of the election. Even if Trump maintains his "I am protecting America" rhetoric, he will face backlash from farmers, industrialists, and middle-class voters over rising costs. Mexico is playing its last card, warning, "If Trump carries out his threats, we will use our economic weapons." U.S. trade officials are taking the situation seriously, knowing that Mexico is not just another market, it is an integral part of U.S. production chains. Still, Trump's stance remains firm. Nobody negotiates with us like that. Time will tell if Trump backs down, but for now, both sides are waiting with their tariff guns drawn. This could lead to a confrontation that shakes North American free trade to its core. What do you think? Is Mexico serious, or is this just a bargaining tactic? How will the US respond? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and hit the like button. See you in the next update.